Hi, I'm delighted to be able to participate in the World Ethical Data Forum and join the fantastic lineup of speakers discussing the use and future of data. My name is Estelle Masse. I'm Global Data Protection Lead at Access Now. In my day-to-day work, I advocate for the development and enforcement of data protection laws and safeguards. And I call on tech companies to end their surveillance business model. Today, I will focus on just that. I will explain the data harvesting business model of companies, how it harms people, and how it benefits governments seeking access to people's data. I will then move to discuss the importance of core data protection principles like data minimization and purpose limitation, and how they are important to end the surveillance business model before addressing the need for government surveillance reform. Nowadays, a handful of companies control your experience online, and they have designed a data harvesting business model that is replicated in nearly all actors across the different online markets. The companies behind these business models are Facebook, Google, Amazon, and to a lesser extent, Microsoft and Apple. What do these companies do with your information? As Mark Zuckerberg famously said, well, they sell ads. The data harvesting business model is made for and to sustain the advertising industry online. This is the era of surveillance as a business model, where your every move online is being tracked, recorded, analyzed, extrapolated, and used to influence your decision and those of others. All of this on the altar of your privacy. To be fair, once upon a time, this company did come up with new products and services. They help people connect with each other. They help companies to organize better. They help sellers to grow their business, and people find information faster than ever before. But for over the past 10 years or so, this innovation focus has been taken over by an untenable and unsustainable never-ending growth objective and hard revenue targets. It has been a long time since we have seen one of the tech giants bring up groundbreaking innovation. In fact, innovation in itself has become a token. Faced with attempts from lawmakers around the world to regulate online markets and introduce privacy and data protection safeguards, the GAFAM are often raising innovation as a shield against it. We must remember that innovation for innovation's sake is both valueless and purposeless. Innovation is not always synonymous of positive progress, and it can have negative consequences, particularly if it reinforces the harmful collectible approach that this company have towards data. As we move to discuss the harms and impact of the business model of this company, it is important to note that there is an apparent lack of control over the way they are handling our data. First, it's unclear how much data those tech companies actually have. We have estimates from companies on how much we use their platform. For instance, we know that Google Search processes a bit more than 2 trillion global search per year, but we do not have a definite figure of how much data the company holds about us. We know that this is a lot of data, but we cannot put a clear number on it. When preparing for this discussion, I spent some time researching different resources and documents from the companies and online to try to find a number. But short finding of actual data, I did find a form entry from a former Google employee, or at least allegedly, who said that even themselves could not put a number on how much data they have or how much storage capacity they have around the world. What they can say, though, is that, and I quote, have buttloads of data. We do know from 2022 statistic that Google is the most visited site globally nearly every month. And we know from 2019 data that the top 3 most searched terms on Google search are, in the following order, Facebook, YouTube, and Amazon. Aside from the data harvesting practices of this company that we're discussing today, this does raise a few antitrust and competition questions about the power this player holds, both individually but also as a group. The collectible approach to data that these GAFAM have spread all across the online economy means that nowadays companies often collect data way more than they actually need. As a result, data often sits unused in storage. A 2015 study of more than 300 ICT companies in the UK, France, and Germany showed that around 72% of data gathered by this company did not end up being used. Other studies from the US and around the world suggest that anywhere between 60 to 80% of the data collected by company goes unused. While we don't know how much data tech giants have or what they exactly do with it, we do know from two whistleblowers at those companies that they often don't know exactly where the data sits. Published documents from a Twitter whistleblower and reporting from Politico Europe from several former Amazon employees indicate that these companies don't know for sure where they store data and that there are several flaws in data security on the way this data can be accessed. With the surveillance business model, tech companies chose to put profit and ads over people's rights, including the rights to privacy. Online companies have largely been collecting any and all data about any person. Beyond the data security and unlawful access risk we raised before, this over-collection of personal data can harm people considerably and lead to data-driven discrimination. These harms range from a more obvious identity theft type of harm to less obvious example, such as relationship harms in case of loss of confidentiality, emotional or reputational harms when private information becomes public, or chilling effects on free speech due to a loss of trust. Discrimination-related harms are particularly problematic. Data collection and processing can reduce opportunities for Black, Hispanic, Indigenous, and other communities of colors, or actively target them for discriminatory campaign and deception. For instance, during the 2016 US election, it has been reported that the Russian Internet Research Agency used Facebook and Twitter audience filter to target Black people in order to discourage them from voting. Other research provide ample example of data-driven discrimination into everyday life of this community, impacting access to housing, employment, lending and credit, health benefits, and more. For instance, a study in the US found that biases in algorithmic strategic pricing resulted in Black and Latino borrowers paying higher interest rate on home purchases and refinance loans compared to white and Asian borrowers, costing the Black and Latino community between 250 and 50 million every year. With the rise of AI, particular attention will need to be given to the relationship between the data harvesting business model of the company and the way algorithms are currently being built. Often, trove of data are injected into opaque AI, an automated system to place ads, sell products, and even generate text or image content. Some surveillance technology are so dangerous that they cause more problem than the one they're commissioned to solve, and a lot of those technology rely on automated system or AI. The use of facial recognition and remote biometric technology in public accessible spaces, for instance, enable mass surveillance and discriminatory surveillance that can ruin lives in community. The consequences are severe. The business model of those companies do not serve people. It not only takes away our fundamental rights, but it also creates new risk for us and for population and community that historically face discrimination. This business model is made to serve tech companies' revenue and to grow the ad industry profit. For as much as the industry is trying to sell us on the idea that we all love to being tracked and to get personalized content, the reality might be quite different. People are often unaware of how organizations use their data. They feel like they have little control over those data practices. A 2019 Pew survey showed that 81% of US respondents felt the risk that they face because of data collection outweighed the benefits, and a majority of respondents, 79%, also reported being concerned about the way their data was being handled by company. People across the world feel the same way. A study of more than 20,000 people across 40 countries showed that 7 in 10 people are concerned about sharing personal information, while 2/3 of them do not like the current privacy practice of most data collectors. In fact, what we know is that when people are left with the choice to refuse tracking, they largely say no, as demonstrated by the Apple App Tracking Transparency feature. While lawmakers around the world are moving to regulate online platforms and their business model to address these harms, governments have been taking advantage of the collected-all approach of these companies to turn it largely in an accessible system via their surveillance program. This is what Bruce Schneier calls the public-private surveillance partnership. To quote him, the primary business model of the internet is built on mass surveillance. and our government intelligence gathering agencies have become addicted to that. While companies track us to sell ads and make money, intelligence agencies are also in the business of spying on everyone. With the data harvesting business model of most tech companies, the NSAs and alike realize that it's far easier to access the data collected by this company rather than trying to collect this data themselves. Schneier notes that in some cases, intelligence agencies may ask for this data nicely to the companies. In other cases, they might exercise pressure to these companies. But sometimes they simply gain access to infrastructures and grab data from the companies directly as it moves around in cables or in servers. Next year will mark the 10-year anniversary of the Snowden revelation, which shed light on a lot of the details of this public-private partnership. The revelations were initially met with calls for reform in how data is handled. Looking back, now we know more about the practices, but the gaps in protecting our privacy online remain significant. What can we do to end the surveillance business model of online companies that feeds into the disproportionate surveillance of states? First, we need to adopt and enforce data protection and privacy laws. Tech companies will have you think that privacy is either dead or overrated, which is a convenient message when your business model is based on ignoring this rate. The reality is that if all countries were to adopt and enforce core data protection principles, such as data minimization and purpose limitation, companies would have to rethink their business model. Instead of letting companies wonder what they can do with data that sits unused in storage, let's have regulators ask them, why did you collect the data in the first place? If those principles are not binding and not enforced, companies and entities will continue to collect more data than we need, despite not knowing what to do with it or despite the potential harm for people. Because every minute this unused data remains stored unnecessarily, every time it's transferred across jurisdiction without needing to be, people's rights are placed at risk, and companies are potentially liable if the data is leaked, misused, or accessed without proper authorization. Some companies would justify the continuation of these collectible practices by promising transparency and strong security. These promises are important, but insufficient if they don't go with a reduction of the amount of data collected. The best way to prevent data breach and abuse is not to have the data in the first place. We must incentivize companies to collect only the data they need to deliver their product and service, to do so transparently, and to store it securely. It's critical that regulators around the world address the misconception that for the digital economy and artificial intelligence to succeed, as much data as possible is needed, when what is needed is the best possible quality of data, which is much more limited. From a public sector side, government must reform their surveillance framework and develop clear rules for lawful government access to personal data. The principle of necessity and proportionality must be guaranteed across the government practices, and people must have transparency and remedy rights. The internet was not built to be a surveillance tool. It's the dominant business model of online companies and government self-interest that is turning into one. The damage that the ad industry has done and is doing to society online and offline should be further studied and reined in by data and competition regulator. We have a collective responsibility to put an end to this business model. The way forward will likely take time, so this reform can be conducted and data protection safeguards can be adopted. Some countries have started, but we will need a global convergence for privacy for it to work, as well as key action from the US, where a lot of the tech giants are from. Data harvesting practices are so ubiquitous that it can be hard to remember how the online world worked before, or to even think of an alternative. But this can be the major innovation and progress we work on for the internet in the years to come.